Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I am so excited about my guest today. I'm one of the first people to admit I am not a financially minded person, right? 2 and 2 don't always make 4 for me, which is why a business person like me needs a person like my guest. So please join me in welcoming Rob Braake to our program today. Rob, how are you doing?
I'm good, Deb. Thanks for having me.
We're going to have such a great conversation. We just had a great pre-chat. I always think I should, record those because that's where the fun is. But let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this. So Rob Braake is the founder of Insight Matters, a fractional CFO and accounting firm that helps 7- and 8-figure online businesses transform their numbers into strategic growth engines. Rob's career began in corporate banking at ING, a path that took him from the Netherlands to China, where he spent 7 years co-founding and building multiple green tech ventures, an experience he describes as a masterclass in pragmatic problem solving. Today, his global team of more than 20 professionals serves as the financial backbone for e-commerce brands, digital agencies, and SaaS companies, helping founders move from that gut feeling to data-led decisions that optimize profitability, cash flow, and company value. So again, Rob, welcome.
Thank you.
Well, we, of course, had great fun chatting before because I am, too, a former ING employee. And it's very bizarre to work for a company that is that big, and lots of benefits, lots of great things, but it's also so many layers, so many levels, so confusing.
Oh, yes.
But aside from that, tell us about how it is that you got to where you are today.
That started in me with ING. So I did my first master's, went traveling, got a job offer from KPMG, decided not to take it. I wanted to do another master's because I was 24. I was too young to start work, which is probably not what most people would have done in their career at that point. And after my second master's, I joined ING in their global talent program, which was this elite program that would help us to become the next generation of leaders in ING, all the nice corporate marketing on that program. And I've done a couple of assignments there, a couple of projects, and the last one was in China, because of course we had to do one project abroad. In those 6 months, I was working on behalf of ING in a Chinese bank where they own a minority stake. So there was like 5,000 Chinese people and 4 people from ING. And that was such a mind-shifting experience. I was working in the Netherlands and it was a very stable industry, stable market. And in China, we grew 20% year on year and we were losing market share.
Wow.
So it was an absolute roller coaster market at that point. We're talking 2010-ish. And I just loved the vibe and energy there. So I decided what every sane person would do to quit my corporate job because I wanted to stay in China. Now, at that point, I have 1 or 2 years experience. Nobody's going to give me an expat job. I didn't want to work a local job. So I had to become an entrepreneur because that's the only way I could make a living staying there. So together with a partner, I launched this clean tech investment firm. And in 7 years, we launched 4 clean tech companies.
Wow.
All of them are still surviving. But after 7 years, I realized none of them are making the hockey stick growth that we were aiming for. And we had great plans, great ideas. And in hindsight, very mediocre execution, or at least way too optimistic. So I stepped out. And in order to pay the rent, I started working as a fractional CFO. for a company of a friend of mine, and did that for another friend and another company, and that kind of got out of hand. So I accidentally launched this business, which was a fractional CFO
People
business.
paid you.
Exactly. And it worked. I liked doing it, but I got very frustrated because every time I would work with somebody new, I would ask for data, I would ask for financials, I'd ask for reports, and I would always get garbage. Sorry to be so blunt. Yeah. And so at some point I got frustrated, and I thought, you know what, screw it. If I want to do this well, I need better data, and that means that I'm going to have to do it myself. Now, I'm not an accountant by training, so I can't do any accounting myself. So that's why I started building a team. Not because I wanted to run an accounting firm, but I wanted to make sure that on the CFO side, we can do good work. And I can't do good work with bad numbers. So that kind of got out of hand. And now we're a couple years in. We're 25 people spread out over 13 countries.
Wow.
I left China 8 years ago almost. Did a couple of years in a couple different countries, and since 3 years I'm based in Portugal. So it's been a bit of a non-standard roller coaster road, I would say.
I love it. Because what's happened that whole time is all of the experience that you've gained.
Oh yes. It's not always the easy route, but it's
Right.
definitely the interesting route.
Right. And it was funny at the start, I was talking about the fact that, 2 and 2 don't make 4 for me. And I think that's probably, here in the States, they say, half of all small businesses fail. That might even be higher. Who knows? And of course, I am guessing that the vast majority of that comes down ultimately to finances. Right. And maybe it's that they didn't have the right staffing, but they didn't have the right staffing because they couldn't pay the right staffing, or they didn't grow. They couldn't grow because they didn't have the finances. And in your bio, I mentioned that, so many people go with that gut feeling. And I see that all the time. When I ask people, well, why did you decide to do whatever? They say, it seemed like a good plan, right?
Yes.
And so tell us why that's a really bad thing to do.
Well, just because what you mentioned, that's already pretty clear. But the thing is, if you're a very small business, you're a one-man show, you have a couple of clients, and your gut feeling tells you, I can do this a little bit more or less.
Right.
That's fine. You get away with that.
The gut's good.
It might not be it's good enough. But now imagine you're running a company with 20 people, couple million revenue, and your gut feeling tells you should expand to a certain direction. If your gut feeling is right, great. But the probability of your always being right, that makes it more gambling than a decision. So in the ideal situation, you have a gut feeling and you have numbers. And if they are talking the same direction, the same language, then you have double confirmation. Go do it. If they are in opposing directions, so your gut feeling tells you to go left, but the numbers tell you to go right, then you have a really interesting conversation to have with yourself, your finance person, your colleagues, your customers, whatever. Because at that point, it's like, hey, I think it's left, but the numbers say right. Which one is wrong? Why? And if you figure out what the root cause is, and you get them to align, again, regardless of the direction, you have so much more confidence and so much more probability of making the right decision, that your probability of getting yourself into trouble goes down a lot. You're much more likely to survive.
Well, and I think probably one of the biggest issues is that people don't even actually know what their numbers are. They know how much they bill a month. They know what they've got in the bank. They know what their expenses are, because at least once a year we have to know that for taxes. But otherwise we're kind of like, right?
Yeah. And again, if it's a very small, simple business, to some extent you get away with that.
Right.
But what you were mentioning there is already like my personal biggest frustration. People look at the books and the finances as the thing I have to do once a year for taxes. And yes, you have to do that. If you don't, you're going to have a problem. But the primary purpose of the books is not for your tax filing. The primary purpose should be for you as the owner to understand what's working and what's not working, if you're on track or not, if you're making money or not. So the books have to be set up in such a way that you want to look at them and that you understand what's in there. If you as the owner don't understand your books, your finance person is doing something wrong, because you cannot make big decisions about investments, about hiring, about firing, if you don't understand if which product is making a profit, or which location is making a profit, or which service is doing better or worse. You need some level of management information, some level of granularity to actually be able to say, okay, this service works. This is where we're going to hire. This is where we're going to invest our marketing on. If it's, I'll do that at the end of the year, you're so far behind the reality. You're a passenger in your own business at that point.
Right.
And that's, I think, the opposite of what we want.
Right. And it's important when you're looking at those numbers to know the reason for them. Okay, this went down because this went up because, and because some of those things you can control, some things you can't. I mean, there's all sorts of exterior things that happen. But, like here in the States, they were talking, it's close to end of the first quarter, right? And so companies are getting ready to start having to report things. And of course, here in the States, one of the biggest things that is now causing issues with so many companies is that little thing called the tariff. And, that's totally out of their control. There's but and it's not like you could plan on that. I mean, that was the tricky thing. But that's where you look at it and go, okay, well, our costs went up because. And then the important thing is, are they going to stay high, right? And we can't say, oh no, the tariffs are going to go away, because we don't know that. They might go away, they might double. I mean, who knows? But yeah, it's so important to know what's going on and why things happen. Maybe it's you're looking at your sales. Well, this area went down. Okay, that was because Bob, our best salesperson, was out sick. All of those things tie into it. And I think the thing is, most business owners don't want to know that, because that's not what we got into business for. And more importantly, and maybe worse, is we trust those people to just be taking care of things and to tell us, everything's good.
Oh,
Uh-oh, I poked the bear.
oh yes, you did. So you mentioned that's not what we got into business for. I would argue differently.
We got into business to stay in business.
Yes, we got into the business to hopefully at least make a decent income, maybe build wealth, maybe realize an exit. But in the end, the business should serve you personally, and that has a very, very strong financial component. If you're just doing it because you love the work, fine, you make it a charity. No worries.
It's called a hobby. That's okay.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that, but let's be clear about that. If it's a business, it should make money. So that is absolutely critical for you to know. It's the one piece where every part of the business comes together. If you have 100 grand in the bank, you can decide to spend it on marketing. You can decide to spend it on buying more products. You can decide to launch a new product, but you probably can't do all three because you don't have enough cash. So money is the one part where everything in the business comes together. Now, I understand numbers are not the most sexy part. Everybody thinks that the new marketing campaign or the new product is much more sexy. I actually agree with that, but it doesn't mean that they are more important.
Right. And it is important to know what's going on. I was talking with a business owner who was telling me that she was going to have to declare bankruptcy. And I was stunned because I thought things were going very well. Every time I had talked to her, it's going good. We're expanding. We're doing this. We're doing that.
Yeah.
And so I said, what the heck? Right? And she said, well, my bookkeeper never told me we had issues. And I looked at this person and I said, did you ask? And of course, that answer was no. And I think part of it is because 2 and 2 don't make 4 for us, we don't want to admit we don't understand. And we don't want to have to say, Rob, I need you to provide me more detail on that. Or why is that? We just like, if we even, and so how do we get over that hurdle?
I would almost say, let's turn it around. If you have somebody in your team who is new on, let's say, marketing, would you want that person to ask you questions? Would you want that person to show the interest to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how that fits, how everything fits together? A good bookkeeper wants you, or a good accountant, or especially the higher level, the controller or the CFO, they expect you to ask questions because you need to understand it. We have clients, when they start working with us, they don't know the difference between gross profit and net profit.
I know that one.
Exactly. And it's fine if they don't know that. I won't judge them on that. If after a year of working with us, they still don't know it, something is going wrong, because half of our role is to educate. We're not just throwing the numbers and expect you to make the conclusions. For us, it's also good if the client understands the numbers, if they're asking good questions, if there's more of a conversation. So put that little ego aside and ask the questions. If your bookkeeper responds bad to that, get another one.
Right.
Because they should be happy that you're showing interest in their work, that you care about what they're doing, and that you want to understand.
Right. And if you have to keep saying, I need more detail, they should be saying, what do you need me to say? Or in a good way, how are you needing it? Not what do you want, right? They should. And it is, and ultimately they should want everything to go well too, because it's their job. They don't want to be unemployed.
It's true, but one slight caveat, and apologies if I insult people here, but a bookkeeper is typically very good at tracking what happened and making sure the numbers are accurate.
Right.
The translation of what that number means and if it's good or bad, most bookkeepers are not able to do that. So for them to flag you proactively, hey, this is off, from my experience, that's not a realistic expectation from a bookkeeper.
Right.
Then you talk about a controller or an accountant or a CFO. The bookkeeper is the one that makes sure the numbers are accurate.
Right.
That translation of, hey, maybe Deb wants to know that this is higher than last month. That's not something that they typically, stereotypically do.
Right. Right. And you mentioned an accountant and a CFO and things like that. And those are very different. And so talk to us about that.
So we work with a concept, we call it the financial hierarchy of needs. I'm assuming most people listening know Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Right. We've got our basic things, and then we've got their, this is really good.
Exactly. And everybody wants to go up higher in the pyramids. But the finance function in the business is kind of the same. The grunt work, the boring work, the bookkeeping, again, sorry for the language, it's boring. But it is the foundation, because that builds the numbers. Once the numbers are accurate, you can put a layer on top of that. You can start transferring that to management.
Extremely critical. I mean, that's the thing.
Yes, but only once the numbers are accurate, then it starts to make sense to make that into more management information. And once you have that in place, you can, that's all, the first of is bookkeeper, the second one is more accountant and controller. And if you have good reporting in place, then it starts to make sense to think about, hey, what can we do going forward? What is the plan for the next 6 months, the next 12 months, the next 5 years, whatever. But if you do that with bad data, bad historic data, you're setting yourself up for a disaster.
Yeah, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. So getting the foundation right with a solid bookkeeper, solid systems, solid processes, it is boring, but it is so incredibly important. If you're hiring a CFO and you're spending an ungodly amount of money on a full-time CFO, but the numbers they're working with are unreliable,
right,
you're just wasting the money. you're buying a nice feeling of confidence that's based on nothing. So again, foundation is in place first, and then build up all the things on top of that with a controller who runs the reporting and who runs the forecasting, or a CFO who is much more on the strategic side, on where is this business going to go in the next 5 years.
Right. And accountants have their focus, much of which, especially here in the States, is, what are the tax ramifications, things like that. And same with, I have a CPA. I'm a small business. I, not, I'm good at what I do. I'm the size I want to be. So I just have a CPA because I have no idea how to file my taxes. And so I have, but as wonderful as she is, she's not going to advise me on business things. I mean, she might look at it and go, how come you spent so much on X? But that's not her job either, and I think that's where we fall down is we assume that those people are going to be giving us the guidance that we need. And then we're not asking the right questions. I mean, if I asked her, hey, Danae, where do you think I should be going next year with it? She very rightly should probably say, that's not my job. You know? And that's perfectly fine. She knows what lane she's supposed to be in, and she does it very, very well.
Yeah. A CPA is trained to and thinks from a tax optimization perspective. And that's critical. That's very important. But you as the owner probably have different questions. Which service should I go harder at? Which product or which service should I cut? Can I afford to hire this new senior manager? Your CPA is unlikely to understand your business and your market good enough to actually help you with that because it's not their skill set.
Right.
They're looking at the tax side, not the business side.
Right. So, somebody knows, okay, I need better financial support and advice. And then, of course, the next thing they say is, but I'm not big enough to have a full-time CFO. That's where someone like you comes in because you can do 1 day a week, 1 day a month, whatever they need. And so talk to us more about what the importance is of hiring fractional type of people.
So the whole thesis about hiring fractional people is that you get the experience and the seniority without the full cost package. I mean, in the US, if you're hiring a full-time CFO, you're looking at 2, 3, 4, 500,000 a year. That's out of reach for most small businesses. And honestly, it's not necessary. If you're doing a good job in keeping your business simple, and that would be my number one recommendation in general, keep it as simple as you can. In some cases, just 1 hour a month, just one call a month can already be enough to just get the confidence, get sanity checking, etc., that everything is on track. That's a whole different price point than $500,000 a year in salaries. So the idea here is that you have access to the experience, you have access to the knowledge at a fraction of the price, and you get the benchmarking information. So we work specifically with e-commerce and agencies, with digital businesses. So if we start talking with a new agency and we just onboarded one last week, we immediately look at the numbers and we say, okay, compared to your peers, these numbers seem off. This seems a bit high. This seems a bit low. And that is immediately the added value because we don't have to jump into all the details of their business.
Right.
Just by understanding the ecosystem, it's already very clear. This is the key area you need to focus on. So you don't need a full-time person for that. You don't even need a day a week for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I love about your organization is you have people around the world, and which is great because it is different to function in every single country. There's there's so many people who think, okay, well, I can start selling my product or my service somewhere else, or they're based somewhere else, right? And so they're trying to figure all that out. And it is very important to hire somebody who knows, and I'm putting this in my air quotes, local. And by that, I mean state, regional, federal, whatever it is, they need to know that. I wouldn't expect somebody who works, who is, say, from England to know US tax code, because that's really complicated and it changes, every time somebody is longer sneezes. And so, you want some, really, you want somebody who knows your local situation.
For the taxes, that's critical. For the business side, I think it's much more important they understand the ecosystem,
Right.
the types of business.
Yeah.
Now, I will be very honest. We have people in 13 countries for two reasons. One is it makes us more attractive as an employer.
Right.
Because people like to work with a very international team. So that's one part. The second part is risk management. So if you have all your team in one place, and there's a hurricane,
Right.
and there's a blackout, your whole team is offline.
Right.
We work with clients in basically almost every time zone, from Australia to Europe to the US, across the world. So we can have our team in every time zone, so we can always be online for every single time zone. And if there's a hurricane somewhere, it's only one or two, maybe three people that are offline, and the rest can just keep functioning.
Right.
So it's very pragmatic risk management from our side.
Right. Well, and as you said, if somebody especially wants to be operating in multiple countries, they really need to be working with somebody who knows, what's going on in those countries.
Yes. And actually, ironically, that's one of the reasons why we only do the business side, because our clients are all similar setup. Most of them are remote, but at least somewhat international setup. So we have the weirdest entity structures, weirdest countries. We have people with Hong Kong holdcos and then BVI, the British Virgin Islands, and then US or Belize. My common sense about taxes is pretty reasonable, but there's no chance on earth that we will know everything about US tax and BVI and England.
Right.
It's just, no. Like you said about your CPA, we want to stay in our lane, business side, management side.
Right. Right. And can you answer some basic questions? Maybe. I mean, because you can sit there and answer, Google it real fast. But yeah, if it's a long-term type of thing, it needs to be, you need to be dealing with an expert in that area.
Yeah. We know enough to make a bit of a sanity check if what the tax people are telling makes sense or not.
Right.
But don't focus on the details there. Yeah.
Right. It's funny. I'm a marketing person, and one of the things that I talk a lot about with people is if you're in different countries, there are things from a marketing perspective you need to look at. And long ago, it seems like a different lifetime, right? I taught communications and marketing for Metro State College of Denver, and and we talked a lot about this. And the cool thing was I had a lot of international students. And so they were able to provide a lot of input. But, I told them things like the color green means different things in different countries. Here in the States, it's wealth, right? And it is, okay, we're going to ignore the marijuana thing because that's now one of the green things. But it is also green as an environmental and things like that. In some other countries, it's a negative color. In some countries, black is a positive color. Wording on how you do things, all of those things. So you need to take that into account. And folks, I laugh about Google and, things like that. No, you can put it into Google, you can put it into your AI. But you need to still make sure that you have talked with a local linguist expert, whoever it is. Otherwise, you might be telling somebody that, you've got this greatest thing in the world, and here in the States, it's perfume, and somehow it translated to army boots, right? And so, that's why it's so important to make sure that whatever local culture you're dealing with, what's going on there.
Oh, yes. I remember from when I was still in China, the amount of Western car brands that had a, let's call it inconvenient translation of their name because they tried to change it phonetically, and that would just kill their sales.
Right.
The ones with a good name, they did really well because the name sounded similar and it had a really nice positive meaning.
Right.
But being off on that was horrible. And on the color part, the stock, I remember the first time I was in China looking at usually the bank office would have this stock market board in there. And it was all green. So I thought it was a good day. And I just saw all the people look very upset. Turns out, in the West, stock market goes down, numbers are red. In China, stock market goes down, numbers are green. So it was a horrendous day on the stock market. And but it looks amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that translation is critical.
Right. And customs, all of those things. I mean, it's just so important that if you're going to be doing business somewhere, you need to know, a little bit about it. And yeah, you can get some research online, but yeah, you need to really make sure you know what you're doing.
I would say in general, and that is based on my own experience working in China, that's based on the work we're doing with our clients. You want to make sure that you know enough to call the bullshit of whoever you're talking with. You don't have to be the expert on image or taxes or tariffs.
Sound quite right.
Exactly.
Right.
As long as you have that common sense, and then you can poke, and then whoever you're talking with should be able to explain you exactly what they're doing, why they're doing it, etc.
Right. And even just words. I mean, I have friends who are British, and actually, I was over in Scotland, and somebody asked me if I was knackered, and I was like, "What's it?" Well, it meant tired. I mean, but knackered sounded kind of ooh, right? But I love that word now, but yeah, I mean, it's just and 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 of course, numbers are numbers are numbers, but it's still
the same goes here. The same goes here. It is also a translation. It is also a understanding where it comes from and what it means. And you need to understand enough to know what you need to ask and what you're comfortable with. But in the end, the responsibility is yours.
Right. To again go, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. And you add another level of confusion of all sorts of things with the fact that the currency is different everywhere.
Yes.
And so just because you understand rubles or US dollars or whatever, that's where it changes. And especially the amounts. I mean, like here we would say 1,000 of something is okay. Somewhere else, 1,000 might be really good or really bad. Depending on what their local currency is.
Just to hammer down one thing, why it's so important that you're on top of that. Last year, we worked with an e-commerce company. They grew from 0 to, I think it was $30 million run rate in 18 months.
Oh.
Which is rocket shit.
They were partying.
Yeah, maybe that was part of the problem because their sales were amazing. But with e-commerce, there's always cash flow constraints. So the bank account was always empty.
Right.
And when we started working with them, we started to dive in like what happened. We could not match the payments that they made to suppliers to purchase orders. They would just pay $1 million to that supplier and just $2 million to that supplier.
Oi!
Without understanding which purchase orders they were actually paying for.
Okay, even
because they grew so fast. No, they grew so fast that they completely lost control.
Right.
The supplier told them, you need to pay us, you have this amount outstanding, and they just paid without knowing what they exited for. Exactly. So then when you start diving in, you realize this is a rocket ship under the command of two people that are blind because they have no idea what they're doing. They were absolutely rock stars on the marketing side. That's why they got there. But the second the environment changed a bit, their marketing started to break a little bit, sales plummeted, and the company almost went under because they had no control over what was going on. And that's why it's so important that you as the owner are always responsible, and you need to have the people around you and the numbers. You don't have to know every detail, but you need to know what's going on, because otherwise you might think you're building something amazing and your headline revenue might sound amazing, but it might be a disaster waiting to happen.
Right. And you mentioned something that I like is that you need to at least recognize there's something off.
Yes.
When I have 2 master's degrees also. And when I was working on one, it was what's known as a cohort program. We didn't get to pick the classes. Same group of people did the whole program for, I think it was 3 years. It was really fun, but we didn't get to pick the classes. I mean, the university picked it, all that stuff. It was a pilot project. But one of them was video. Now, this is long before we did all video with our cameras and all sorts of things. I mean, you still had the big cameras. You went into a video editing room where there were 1,000 knobs and dials and things like that.
Oh, geez.
And oh yeah, I mean, it was very cool, right? But I remember I told the professor, because you can probably guess that I'm not one to sit and be quiet. I said, I'm never going to do this. I don't need to know this, right? We used to say that at algebra, right? Well, I don't ever know. But I told him, I said, I will never be doing this. And he looked at me and he said, would I, as a communications department manager, whatever, hire somebody to do it? And I said, well, probably. And he said, you need to recognize if they're doing it right or wrong. You don't have to know every detail, but you need to know the big picture. And I thought, you know what? He's right. It's, obviously there are the people who take advantage, but there are also just people who, might get it wrong, or, all sorts of things. So it is good to know at least the big picture.
I think good to know is actually still too nice and too soft.
Mm-hmm.
It's critical.
Right. Mm-hmm.
If it's your business, if your family's wealth is on the line,
Mm-hmm.
having an overall idea is probably not good enough. You need to be solid on your trust that the numbers are accurate,
Mm-hmm.
and that you understand what they mean.
Right. And for people who went, ew, get over it. Do you really want your business to be successful? I mean, that's what it comes down to.
And if you're doing it well, you keep your business as simple as possible, because honestly, it's very easy to add complexity. But complexity it's good for my business, don't get me wrong. So in that sense, please make it complicated. But if you're keeping the business simple, in a lot of cases, if you're a small business, 1 or 2 hours a month, sit down, look at the numbers, make sure you understand everything. Why did it change? What's behind it? What's going on? 1 or 2 hours a month is enough. And I'm pretty sure if you're running a business, there's other tasks that you're doing that take 2 hours a month that you really, really don't like.
Right.
So like you said, hold your nose, get it done, because it will pay off.
Right. And again, this is not something that you outsource, that you delegate. I mean, I'm all for, delegating and empowering and all that, but no, you have to have a good grasp of your finances.
Yes. And if you're doing it really well and you keep the business simple, you can do it by yourself. If you're uncomfortable or it adds a bit more complexity, get somebody like us or any other fractional CFO that you trust that really understands your business. Get them in, sit down with them for 1 or 2 hours a month. It's probably enough to get started, to get the overall direction right.
Right. I love it. Well, let's kind of switch conversations here a little bit and talk about the people who've been doing, they've been going well. They've been doing things, but they're thinking, I might want to either do something different or stop doing this. And, so many people, now my business, when I'm done, it's done, because it is me. But for many businesses, and I don't care if it's, the landscaping business that has 10 employees or something much bigger, they, that business might be able to continue. And so, but what we do is we think, oh, I'm going to sell my business in the next 3 months, or worse, you have to sell it immediately for whatever reason. And that's a really bad strategy. Sometimes it happens. I mean, but when, if we are really thinking, okay, at some point I'm going to exit my business, at what point should we start planning that? And I know day one is actually the real answer, but when are we supposed to get serious about it?
Yes. Like you said, in an ideal world, you build the business from day one so that it is exit ready from day one.
Right.
So that every day you can choose to not sell it yet because you still want to keep doing it. For most of us, that's not how reality works. But ideally, you start 3 to 5 years beforehand.
Okay.
And the reason for that is actually quite simple. If you're selling a business, in general, you get paid on a multiple of your past profits. So if your books are clean, the buyer comes in, looks at the books and says, you made $1 million profits. I'm going to pay you 4 times profit. So here it's 4 million. Very simple. The problem with that is you don't want to be paid on your historic profits. You want to be paid on the potential that the business has. Like in the stock market, there's usually companies trade on forward earnings, on expected earnings.
Right.
So if you want to get paid on the future value of the business, you need to tell the buyer a story. And you're telling a story on this company came from here, it's now here, and it can go to there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to sell in 3 years from now, you want to make a plan. In the next 5 to 10 years, this is what we're going to do with the company.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to deliver on that in year 1, in year 2, in year 3. And every quarter, you document the progress, you document the results. And after 3 years, you have 12 quarters of data of you delivering on your plan. If your plan was a realistic plan, you now have evidence that your plan is good, that you've achieved the goals that you thought were feasible. So now you go to the buyer and say, look, this is what I've done. This is the plan we made 3 years ago. This is what we've done in the past 3 years. So I am extremely confident that this is the revenue or the profit that we're going to hit in the next 2 years. And then you have the conversation with the buyer. Let's pay me on the future earnings rather than the past earnings.
Right.
Because you have a credible story. You have the data, you have the evidence that your plan is realistic. And of course, the next 2 years is very aggressive growth because that's where you're going to make the value. But you're going to tell the buyer a story. And if the data is there and the story is consistent, that buyer is going to look at it and think, yeah, that's pretty reasonable. And I can see myself execute that plan. And then you're having a very different conversation than how much profit you made last year, because that all of a sudden becomes irrelevant.
Right. I think one of the things that people have so much trouble with when they're thinking about this, and this does tend to be more if it's like, oh my gosh, we have to do this now, are the intangibles, the intellectual property, how much of the business really is the person. Can the business function without that person? And all of those things. So how do you deal with that?
I think the first question is, when was the last time you took a month holiday? If you haven't taken a month holiday,
took a holiday.
Yes. If you cannot step out of the business for a month, you're not selling a business, you're selling a job. And there's plenty of reasons or situations where that's the best thing that's feasible. But if you are running the day-to-day of your business and you're paying yourself a CEO salary, then you can sell the company and the job separately.
Right.
But in that case, hire a CEO first and effectively fire yourself so that you're really just the owner.
Right.
And at that point, you have, again, a much more sellable company because it's no longer you.
Right.
I even saw cases. One of our clients bought a business that was a very interesting one. It was a company, it was an online course company where the owner was the face of the brand. She was all over. It was her face on the website. It was her face in the email. It was her face and name everywhere. But she was doing basically 0 things in the business. So it was still sellable, but they just kept her image as the face of the brand. But it was still sellable. But if she would have been running all the day-to-day, I would have pushed our client to say, don't buy it because this is not sustainable.
Right.
So if you're looking to sell your business, fire yourself.
Right. And we see companies, at least here in the States, that still have that figurehead. It's getting close to lunch here, right? So for some reason, Kentucky Fried Chicken popped into my head, and Colonel Sanders. Colonel Sanders has been dead for a very long time, but that's still the image of the business. But where we see transitions really happen well with things like that, my first thought is Walmart. That they have all the different, people here in the States. I believe today is the first day of employment for the new CEO of Walt Disney. And And I mean, the company is still called Walt Disney, and it probably really does have a different legal name, but, but, he is an outsider. I don't believe they hired from within. I don't remember, but, he's been in the news because he's been talking about I mean, this is, not, "Ooh, hey, we decided yesterday to hire him." They made this announcement quite a while ago. But yeah, it should be a seamless transition
Yes.
and able to weather that. Now, the new person is gonna go in just like any new major hire. They're gonna make changes, good, bad, whatever. But, the company still should be able to function.
Yes. And there's a few things that will be are indications of that. I mean, I jokingly asked when is the last time you took a month holiday,
Mhm,
but the other thing is,
mhm,
are your processes documented? Do you have SOPs?
mhm,
If you're running a landscaping business, do you have a clear approach of how you deal with your clients, how the onboarding goes, how the delivery goes, how the quality control goes?
mhm,
If all of those are documented and actually tracked or enforced,
mhm.
then it's much easier. If it's a group of 3 people and we all just improvise a little bit and we talk a lot with each other and there's nothing on paper, what are you selling?
Right, right.
Then you're not selling anything other than those 3 people, but you want to sell the system, the brand, the reputation, the quality,
Mhm,
and documented SOPs
mhm.
are critical in that.
Right. And you should have them no matter what. We talked at the very start that you and I both worked for ING. And after I left there, I got hired back to do some projects for them. It was really bizarre. I'd been gone 6 months and they literally had not touched my desk. My pencil was still laying where I left it from, 6 months before. And people looked at me like, well, she wasn't out pregnant. But it is just very strange. But one of the things that they hired me back to do were procedures. And so, along the lines, again, crisis management type of things. And so I went to every single area and I said, okay, we need to document what you do every day, every week, every month. And if there's something that's just a once a year thing, okay, we need that also. And I told people, I said, this is kind of the hit by the bus theory. If you are hit by the bus, could somebody else take it over? And there were 2 things that were really astounding about it. The first was the fact that the attorneys, because this is a big company and everybody had their attorneys, they said, anything we do can be done somewhere else. Not a big deal. And I said, okay, but let's get some of your policies down and procedures. And, so we did all this and then well, there is that one report we do every month. I said, oh. And they said, "We have to file it with the state of Colorado, and on the last day of the month." And it's, no matter what, it's the last day of the month. Doesn't matter if it's holiday, weekend, whatever. It has to be filed on the last day of the month. And I said, "Okay, so what happens if you don't file it?" And they looked at me a little sheepish and said, "Well, the company ceases to function." I went, "Oh, now see, this is a critical function." Um,
Excuse me?
yeah, yeah, it was something, and I said, "Okay, so do the people in, Georgia, New York, wherever, do they know this? And do they know who they submit it to?" And on this was, you at least it could be done online, but yeah, but the one that I love the most, and this was, 15, 20 years ago, so a little bit before, a lot of the online stuff.
Yeah.
The most critical function in this extremely large company was the mail room because people mailed their checks. And so somebody had to get those checks and make sure that they got deposited. And I mean, we had, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands that came in, very frequently. And when they discovered they were most critical, they just thought that was the greatest thing in the world. But, it really was something. And so, the procedure was what happens if, say, all of the, just the fire, the fire, the fire suppression stuff has gone off and the building's flooded. That's what I was trying to say. And so we can't get into the building. Can you go to the post office and get the mail? Just is there somebody that can do that? I mean, all of those things. And that's just important no matter where you are and what you're doing. Know those things, know those critical functions, know those. It's nice if we do things, but yeah, know all of those things. And you should know that no matter what.
And just for the record, can we stop using checks, please? It is 2026. Can we just move everything digitally?
Well,
Because
some of our
we have clients that work with digital,
older.
physical sets, and it's
Yeah, and
it's a
now, of
pain.
course, yeah, it is very different because most things are done online. You know, and usually and this is where you have to know your demographic, right? If you're working with people who are in their 20s, they don't even have a checking account. You know, and they certainly can't write a check. I'm in a very large nonprofit as a volunteer, and you know, I was doing membership, and this guy said, "I can't send you a check." I said, "Okay," and he said, "I don't have checks." So, you know, we had to figure something else out. And of course we did. I mean, it was like, okay, well, yeah, let's get us into this century and have online, you know, and I said, and we're not doing PayPal. No, we need to be a little more professional than that. But, but yeah, I mean, the people you are dealing with are 70s and up, they might not be able to pay online.
Fair.
But they can
In our
have somebody set it.
these agencies, that too. But I think the core message here is you have to understand like what's the critical point of failure. Where are you the bottleneck? If you get hit by a bus or go traveling for a month and you're offline, what breaks?
Right.
Salary payments and control over the bank account is a very often recurring one. Most owners are very scared to give other people access to the bank accounts.
Right.
And for good reasons. But with the right systems, the right processes, you can and you probably should, because if you get hit by the bus or you're traveling and your team doesn't get paid,
then your business
your
stops.
team might like you a lot, but
Yeah,
they're not going to last very long in that case.
Right. You know, and there are ways that you can set it up, you know, so maybe if it's a check that's over $2,000 or an authorization, let me put it that way. It takes two people to authorize it. You know, or sending payroll in, somebody else has to verify that it was accurate. Whatever it is, I mean, you can set up those checks and balances to make sure that, heaven forbid, something happens to you, it can function, or more importantly, you can go on vacation.
And you know what the nicest part of this is? If you set up your business in such a way that you are not critical for daily operations, you can sell it for a higher multiple.
Right.
Or you can actually just choose to keep it and actually do the things you like to do, because everything that has to be done is being done by your team. So you can focus on the things that you like, whether that's the marketing side, whether that's the finance side, whether that's the product side. It gives you the optionality.
Right.
So that in itself, even if you don't plan to sell, it's just good habits, good hygiene to try to set it up so you are dispensable.
And that's hard for people, right? Because they want to be indispensable. You know, what happens if they figure out they don't need me? Well, you know, then
that's great. Go travel.
Yeah. Or maybe you always wanted to add this product or this service. Focus on that, right? You know, I remember I had a guest on one time, and I mentioned this before on the program. He has thousands of employees. I mean, he has a big company in Texas. And he said he knew he was truly a success when he went on a 2-week vacation and nobody called and nobody emailed. Because he trusted his employees and he had empowered them to do without. Now, if something absolutely critical, yes, they would have. But he said no, you know, and he said it was the best feeling in the world because he knew he had done a great job of hiring, of setting things up, all of those various things.
So I don't have thousands of people. We are 25. It took me a few years to get to the point as well. Last year, I did that for the first time. And I was scared for the same thing. So I made the agreement with my assistant. I will not check my email. I will not check my Slack. If the house is on fire, send me a WhatsApp. And then, like exactly as you would expect, nothing happens. Everything keeps going.
Every time when there's hits.
Exactly. But it's good to have that security line open that if something goes wrong, they know where to find you. But in reality, if you have hired a capable team, they don't need you.
Right.
And that's the best thing that can happen.
Right. Yeah, because you can go on vacation, you can sell the business, you can do whatever. And which is ultimately what we should be aiming for.
For that freedom and optionality. For me, that's critical. And I
Right.
think that should be the purpose, because we don't all want to work until we're 90.
hmm Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I tell people I'll stop working when I die. But I also, for illness reasons, I took
But by choice.
yeah, I ended up taking almost 2 months off because I was very ill. And like we said at the start, I am my business.
Yeah.
All that happened, well, with the podcast, it was great. They ran best ofs, right? And so that worked perfectly fine. Um, and my clients were notified, and they knew, okay, for 2 months, we need to either get somebody else or adapt. And God bless them, they adapted, and I picked back up right where we left off. But yeah, I mean, it's but think about these things, as we were saying, from day one. I mean, don't wait till you have to, and then you're forced to make decisions that you don't want to do.
Exactly. And that's also exactly the same thing on how to run with your finances. Don't wait fixing your books, don't wait with fixing your finances until the house is on fire, because at that point, you don't have the time, you don't have the bandwidth, you don't have the capacity to deal with it. If you practice the good hygiene from the start, everything becomes easier.
Right. I love it. Well, oh my gosh, this has been so interesting. But we're at the top of the hour. I always look down and go, oh my gosh. But for people who are thinking, okay, I need help, I at least need to find out if I need help. How do they find you, and what are the services that you provide?
So the easiest place to find me is connectrob.com. So ignore my family name, just connectrob.com. And what we do is we can take over everything on the finance side. So we can jump in as fractional CFO, just the high level part. We can run the reporting, forecasting. We can do the management accounting. We can run we call it FinOps. So we can run your payroll, everything on the finance function. But what is actually the most helpful really depends on the situation. So just, if you're interested, schedule a call. We would like to work trust-based, so there's no sales or no pitching. Just let's see what is actually helpful, and we take it from there.
Great. I love it. And folks, like we said, don't put this off. At least be thinking about it. But do something. Do something too about it. And because you never know what's going to happen. So have your arms, your hands, your whatever's around your finances. Know what you're planning for, and go from there. Well, like I said, I have been having so much fun talking with Rob. And so, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave us with?
It's not as scary as people might think. Keep it simple. 1 or 2 hours a month is the best hours you're going to spend. Not necessarily the most fun hours you think, but it's going to get the best return on your time if you just sit down for 2 hours a month and look at your numbers and review.
I love it. Such wise words. Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having a great conversation with Rob Braake, who is the founder of Insight Matters. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.